In a world where the government is shut down, two brave souls soldier on. Episode 32 of the Single Malt Strategy Podcast. I'm your host, the historical gamer, but you can call me Matt. And with me today is Jean, the strategy war gamer. How are you doing today, Jean?
Not bad, Matt. How you doing? I like that intro. I really like that intro.
I mean, I don't really have a great epic movie voice type thing, so, people are probably going to just shut the podcast off already. And, if they want to do that, I understand. That was dumb. But what's new?
Nothing much. I had an interesting December and an interesting January. So this year has been kicking off pretty interestingly and very well. So I'm very motivated. I got some very surprising news in December that gonna have a little pup of my own. So not an actual dog. I'm gonna have a kiddo. So,
do you need to restart your description of what's going on? I'm gonna have a pup, but not a dog. No, a person. It's cool. Well, congratulations, dude.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's your first kid?
Yeah, it's my first. So it's very surreal. I don't know how to be a dad. I'm sure everybody's probably saying right now. I was like, you'll get used to it. You'll figure it out, and I'm sure I will. So, I'm in my mid 30s, so getting up at 3:00 in the morning is probably going to be a challenge for me now.
Yeah, I need to redo my epic movie voice and do, in a world where a baby is crying in the middle of the night. Fearless soldier is wake. I don't know. This is going south. But congratulations. That's exciting news.
Yeah.
What you been doing on the wargaming front? What else is new?
I would say I've been playing just a lot of games, a lot of mobile games. So, on just a day-to-day basis, I've been playing a lot of mobile titles like Sheltered. It's an iOS game. It's also on Steam, I believe, and it's kind of it's like Fallout meets Terraria. There you go. I don't know if you guys played Terraria, but it's Fallout meets Terraria, where you basically are in a Fallout shelter under the ground, and you have to care for your family, and you have to scavenge the wasteland and go around and try to get supplies and stuff like that. It's really cool. I really like it.
What's it called again?
It's called Sheltered.
Oh, Sheltered. I was looking up a game called Shelter, and I was like, this is not that.
No, I know which game you're talking about. I haven't played that one, but I'm planning to. This one is actually really cool. I do like it. It has a lot of ambience, and it's very immersive. The only thing I don't like about this game is I have to make every single character I control have to pee, and telling them to go take a shit, and go and tell them to go take a nap. And it just
what if you don't tell them to go to the bathroom? Do they explode?
I don't know. Every time they're like, I gotta go. I feel bad. So I'm like, just go. And they don't have whoever built this shelter didn't build a bathroom in it. So I had to build some buckets. So they pee in buckets and take a shit in buckets. So it's definitely not sanitary.
Well, all right. That's interesting. I haven't been playing. I don't really play a lot of mobile games. I'm, we'll just rename you the Mobile Gamer, Jean, the Mobile Gamer.
Yeah, I should probably rename myself.
But as far as what I've been playing still a lot of Strategic Command World War II. I'm, into late-ish 1942 in my game, and I've been showing it a lot on the channel, and it's been pretty well received, and I've really enjoyed it. It basically takes Strategic Command, sort of this European-focused game that came out a couple of years ago, and adds the rest of the world, and it's pretty enjoyable. I'm not totally sold on the island hopping mechanics that the game, the way the game has to treat the Pacific campaign. I don't know if that really works all that well. The China theater is interesting, but I don't really get the feel like the actual island campaigns in the Pacific are all that compelling. Amphibious invasions are just handled kind of weird, but overall I'm really enjoying the game.
Yeah, I've been playing Strategic Command a lot myself. I just haven't making any videos about it because there's certain games that I love playing and I don't like recording. Those are the games that I just kind of like. I don't know. I like doing my own thing sometimes. And I really love it. If you guys are not familiar, we did if you're not aware, we published the episode before this one, where we actually sat down with Fury Software, the guys behind Strategic Command 2, and it's honestly it's a great interview. I would encourage you guys to listen to it or watch it if you're on YouTube. They talk about the development process, as well as the hurdles that they had to overcome to develop this game, and also the future of this series, which is really interesting. Although, spoiler alert, my last question was like, are you guys planning to move to mobile? And the answer was no. So that was one of the things I was hoping. I was like, come on. And because I would really love to play Strategic Command on my iPad or my iPhone. I do feel like that's one of the few games that you could actually play on the mobile.
I mean, well, the first thing is it's never going to be on your iPad or on your iPhone because, Apple is going to say, wait a minute. There are countries in this that are real countries, and therefore real countries are the bad guys. We're going to have to remove this from our platform here.
Yeah, you've heard, well, yes, you definitely did hear because we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, but if you guys are not familiar, one of my favorites all-time games of 2017, when it originally came out, was Afghanistan 11, made by every single soldier, incredible game, was taken off the App Store.
Of all the games that they could remove, that's interesting to me because the goal in the game isn't even really to kill the bad guys. It's like the goal of the game is to build up the infrastructure of the different different towns in Afghanistan and to win over those communities to your side. And yeah, you're involved in killing the Taliban and warlord groups, but it's not like that's the primary objective. The objective is to keep the bad guys away from your villages and get the villages to like you. And of all the games that are on mobile platforms, for them to take issue with that, I think is kind of interesting, especially considering all the World War II games and Civil War games and other things like that they have on there that I think are more controversial. I don't think the Afghanistan, at least the period of time in the game that it is being covered, is all that controversial. You can argue whether we should still be there or not. That's certainly an argument to have, but I think this is probably one of the less, if they had been covering Iraq, then I think that would be more controversial than Afghanistan. After 9/11, it's not like there was really much political choice. And in general, I've never heard anyone be like, the Taliban, they're not so bad. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that. So
yeah, I liked your voiceovers.
Yeah, those Taliban guys, they just misunderstood. No, I've never. This is probably the first time that anyone has ever said that.
Sound like Toby Keith right there a little bit.
I love this bar. Whatever. My point is, it just seems like an odd choice for them to raise a stink over. And I don't know if you may have mentioned it, but for those of you who are unaware, essentially Apple said this game doesn't fit our community guide or our developer guidelines because it makes a real world state or a real world group out to be the enemy in a violent game, and so we're removing it from the App Store. Frankly, we should probably do an episode all about that and bring the developers on, but
there's some stuff about that you probably see future on the Single Malt Strategy episode. I got some stuff in the works. I'm not going to release it here, but I got some stuff in the works that's actually going to dive directly into that. So so stay tuned on that. That's probably going to come in the next couple of weeks. So just stay tuned to the channel for that.
Yeah. So I guess in that case, look forward to the future. The future is bright, but maybe not for wargaming on Apple.
Well, I'm still holding out hope. There's a lot of cool games that are still coming out on iOS. Like Every Single Soldier is still publishing. I did have a talk. Well, I'm just going to save everything for the next couple of episodes because I'm going to dive more into that. But it's not taking away from strategy game from on the App Store because there's more coming. And there's a lot of really cool games that will be hitting the mobile platform. One real amazing game that came out during the holiday season. If you guys haven't picked it up or you want to try it out, Tropico came out for the iPad, which was huge. Came out, I think, like a week before Christmas. And
which Tropico is that, by the way? Because there's 5 of them.
Yeah, I think it's Tropico 4 because the way the might be wrong on that, but I believe it's Tropico 4 because the way the UI is set up. I remember somebody mentioning it also. But
iOS version of Tropico is based on Tropico 3 code released in 2009 on PC.
oh, that's what it says.
According to GamePressure.com. So I don't know how true that is or not, but it's what it says.
Oh, okay, so Tropico 3, which is still I'm happy with any type of
I
Tropico.
think in my opinion, the peak of the Tropico series, in terms of popularity, in terms of just the mechanics behind the game, I would argue Tropico 3/4. Like between Tropico 3 and 4, those were I would argue the peak of the Tropico series. Tropico 5 went a very different direction, and they left the it's a city builder sort of sandbox type game, and said we're going to progress you through the ages, and it's no longer like you're one ruler, and as long as you can stay in power, it's more of you're a pre-colonial Tropico settlement, and now you're a Cold War Tropico settlement, and now you're post. They changed the game very substantially after Tropico 4. So I haven't really played much Tropico 4, and Tropico 5 Tropico. I haven't played much Tropico 5, and Tropico 6 is coming out in a couple of months. But at least I think that's what it says. I think it's coming out in March, according to my wish list. But that's I think they kind of shifted gears in the last couple of releases. So I really need to jump in because I know the game changed fundamentally, but I haven't really given it a fair shot yet. Frankly, it just didn't appeal that much to me. I watched some videos of Quill on Tropico 5, and those were pretty good. But other than that, I haven't really, done anything since.
I've played Tropico 5. I really like it. It's been years since I played a previous version of Tropico, but it's a really, really fun game that I love. That I do really enjoy playing. I fire it up on Steam all the time. But yeah, I am looking forward to Tropico 6. I looked at some of the graphics. I didn't go too much into the detail. It is on one of the games that I'm looking forward to. Actually, I made it as an honorable mention of my upcoming top games of 2019. I didn't list it as one of my top games, but it's an honorable mention. So
Nice.
I'm looking forward to that. So.
Well, anything else you've been playing a bit of this year, or I guess the focus of this episode is just we haven't been together in a while. Unfortunately, I've missed the last several interviews with developers that have come out, and you've done a great job on those. But I just I've had some scheduling stuff. I was sick. It kind of sucked. I really wanted to be on that Strategic Command episode. That was a game that I've really enjoyed. But this is sort of our first episode back together. So just sort of a casual get-together podcast and, kind of talking about what we've been playing lately and sort of some of our favorite games of 2018, but also, what we're looking forward to in 2019. So sort of a post-mortem on 2018 and a looking forward to 2019, as we come to sort of I guess probably by the time this comes out, toward the end of the first month of the new year.
So I guess I'll start out. I have my list of the top 3 games of 2018. So my third, starting from the bottom up, the third one, it's a DLC. You probably already going to guess it. It's Battlestar Galactica Deadlock, the Anubis expansion. Big fan of this. I think I mentioned it on this podcast where I love it because one of the key things is called Operation Anubis, where it basically puts you in the shoes of Adama in the first Cylon War. You're not actually playing Adama, but you're in essence Adama. And your job is to get the civilian fleet from Cylon space back into colonial space. And, you have a certain amount of military ships, limited resources, and your job is to run as fast as you can from the Cylons. When I was playing it, I felt exactly like I was on the show and kind of making those key decisions. Adds a wealth of stuff, 11 new maps, tons of new functionality, and it was $10. I think it's a crazy good deal. And then the second one, since I already mentioned it before, is Strategic Command 2, World at War. That was my second top favorite game of 2018. A couple things that I really loved about that is one thing that I mentioned to the developers, I really love how easy it is to manage multiple nations in this game. being able to at one turn run just England and have the AI run everybody else, all the other allies, and then maybe a couple turns later, it's like, you know what? I want to play France now. I want to also run US. Having that on and off switch of being able to control countries and just say, you know what, the AI is going to run the show now is really awesome. I really love that aspect. Diplomacy, there's a couple other cool things that I really like, is that there's a diplomacy system where you can kind of broaden the game, so you can probably make an alliance with Denmark and kind of attack Germany from the north.
The diplomacy system is weird in that game where it's like, I feel like I enjoy it, but on the flip side, I'm kind of like, should I really be spending 50% of my economy on diplomacy? Like, that doesn't feel right. What am I doing? Shipping bags of cash to this country to come to my side? Because, while the diplomacy elements are interesting, you can't convince any of the major allies to leave sort of their prescribed path. You can slow them down, but you're never going to convince the USSR to join the fascists, for example. But you could convince the Argentines to go to war with the Allies. So, the diplomacy is interesting. You bring up a good point. It definitely is one of those games where it's like you can kind of create some alternative history scenarios, or you can really follow the prescribed path. But the actual mechanics behind diplomacy, where it's like, you need to invest 50 IPs for this country, and if you're trying to convince the Russians, then it's 150 IPs, MPPs, which are your basically your money. That part feels a little bit off because, I don't know, the idea of spending huge sums of your economy on a diplomat to go to another country, and that's what's going to determine if they're going to side with you. It's a very gamey concept, but in execution, at least it feels about right, except for the fact that now you can't buy new military units because of this diplomatic. Like, I wish rather than it costing money, they just said, like, you've got 3 diplomatic actions you can take this turn, and it be free. Like that I think would be a better way to handle diplomacy.
Yeah, I kind of feel you on that. I feel like diplomacy is very expensive, as well as that's why actually most of my games that I do just like single player for me, I don't really do diplomacy all that often, mainly because it costs a lot of money. I only do it in certain situations. The other thing that that I'm gonna jump off that is like setting up ships. Putting troops on ships to transport. If I want to move like a corps and an army, it's going to cost like 74 or 75 MPPs. Or if I want to move 2 armies, the cost goes up to a point where it's like, okay, I could either build stuff this turn, research, or I can move troops. And it's kind of like, I wish it didn't cost as much. I wish the MPP for like transporting troops was a lot lower. Maybe instead of 25 or 50 MPs, it was more like, 5 or 10, something not a large amount.
That at least makes sense to me, though, because like if you're talking about throwing divisions or armies, because the game represents individual units as either a corps or, there's garrisons, but there's garrisons, then there's corps, then there's armies. So if you're talking about putting an army, 60,000 men, 100,000 men, whatever that is in sort of an abstract way, because the game doesn't give you true numbers. But if you're talking about putting an army on amphibious ships and transporting them, that's really expensive. You've got to build a lot of infrastructure to support that. So at least intuitively, that makes more sense to me than the diplomacy aspect of it.
Yeah, I can see your point on that. I just, it doesn't make sense immersion wise, I guess, but it's still tough to bite that bullet. The one cool thing that I do like about this though is the editor for Strategic Command 2. When you purchase this game, you get an editor that you can actually go in and say, you know what, I want to change these values. I want to change these values. So you theoretically can actually make an entire scenario, change the values the way you would like it, and then play that game. And that's one cool thing I really love about this game is the replayability. Once you play all the campaigns, and you can replay them constantly because there's so much content there, and there's so many decision systems that every time you play it's different. But the cool thing also about it is that there's a huge community that's making mods. A little spoiler, and you guys are probably going to be like, well, you're giving all these spoilers, I should probably not watch the interview, but you should watch it anyway. There are 2 big mods coming for this game. There's a Napoleonic mod for this, for Strategic Command and a Conquistador app, Conquistador mod that's coming for it. So, yeah.
I was hoping you were going to say World War III.
Well, the developers did say that this game would be perfect for like a World War III, Cold War kind of scenario.
Yeah, I think that would fit better than like a Conquistadors or like Napoleonic armies don't have the same sort of large scale front lines that exist in this game. And I think that's kind of one of the things that it does really well is sort of convey the ebb and flow of front lines and sort of the desire to pocket enemy units and sort of cut them off and then whittle them down as their supply runs out. I think the game really does a good job of conveying the blitzkrieg mechanics there. That I don't know if that applies to non-modern war games, but it'd be interesting to check it out. It's always nice when a game's pretty moddable. So your games so far that you've been playing a lot of this year, Strategic Command that you just mentioned, or the Tropico iOS game, and then did you have a third one or?
Yeah, my top game of 2018 would have to be Armored Brigade, and this game I had to put it on my top list because we also interviewed this developer a couple episodes ago.
Another one where I wasn't there. Those are the good episodes. Everybody, go check them out.
But talking to this developer, they have such a passion for this game. And the amount of work, the one thing that really won me over on this game, and it's a small thing to many people. It's like, it doesn't turn a lot of heads, but it did for me, is the zoom feature in this game. Being able to zoom out from, a tactical map where, you're fighting street combat, one squad's on one side of the street, the other squad's on the other side of the street, and you're, house to house fighting almost. And then zooming all the way out to a massive strategic side where you can see, you're fighting on the bottom of, Berlin, and then, all these, as well as the suburbs of the city, and just jumping in and out of different parts of Germany, all the way down to a squad level is, and it's so fluid. It's Google Maps fluid, where you notice that fluidity that they put so much work behind. Big props to the developer for that. Other cool things is, like I mentioned, they give a bunch of strategic maps in this game that's, if you want a massive gameplay session that's going to last days, maybe even weeks, where you put a couple of battalions on the actual map and just like fight it out where, you're going to have to save it each time and then come back to it. You can do that, or you could take that same map and then just cut out a piece of Berlin or maybe like a suburb of Berlin and just have maybe 2 tank units just go at it and see which will work out, the US or the Soviets. So I really love that. It adds so much replayability. The game is very fluid. It's very intuitive. There was one thing I worried about this game is I saw it and I was like, man, this game is going to take forever to kind of like pick up. But I literally picked it up in 10 minutes and I was like, damn, this is easy to pick up. So yeah. And then they're also coming out with future additions to the game. They're going to add a whole campaign mode to the game. So that's another awesome thing. So that kind of won my heart for 2019. I was like, this game is insane. So yeah, if you notice, all these games are by one publisher. So
well, the Tropico one isn't.
No, the Tropico one is the honorable mention.
Okay. My bad.
PSG was Deadlock was the third one.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm doing a good job.
I mean, that's the story of my life. No respect. I don't get no respect at all.
Yeah. So you kind of stole my top games as well. So I guess great minds think alike. But, my 3 games, and mine are in no particular order, but I had Strategic Command World War II, World at War on my list as well. We've kind of already talked about that a fair bit, so I don't know if I need to go into much more detail other than to say I really enjoy the game. I think they do a great job of showing sort of the grand maneuvers of battles throughout Europe. I think the amphibious side and the diplomacy side leave a little bit to be desired, but on the whole, it's a really good game. It's really enjoyable. And I'm still playing it quite frequently. I'll probably play it once we get off the podcast here today. And then Armored Brigade was also on my list. I think that game the way I would describe Armored Brigade, and I think you're absolutely right with regarding like to the fluidity of the game. The game feels really well optimized in terms of a performance perspective. It is relatively pick up and play for this kind of a detailed squad level war game. And I think all of, there's a lot of detail and information that goes into things to determining if like, this law that I just fired is going to knock out this tank or how sight lines work. And, good Lord, is it difficult to, take a map in my experience. I feel like there's always these anti-tank infantry groups like hiding all over that I can never find until I've lost half of my battalion's armor. But I think one of the things that this game does a really good job is, despite this level of detail, it is pretty intuitive. Like, you point, you click. It's a little bit close combat like in the way that some of the tooltips and pop-ups work in different commands, like if you want to sneak or if you want to go fast or whatever. But then it's also, it reminds me really a lot of Command Modern Air Naval Operations. Like, I feel like if Command Modern Air Naval Operations, which is a game that really focuses on air and sea combat, was taken and said, no, we're going to redesign this for land combat. To me, that's what it feels like, except, it's more specifically Cold War time frame. It's 65 to 91. And Command covers a little bit wider of a period of time. But to me, it's like the land equivalent of Command Modern Air Naval Operations. So I think there's a lot of really positive things about this game. I haven't played it as much as I would like, just because I've been so engrossed with Strategic Command. But overall, I think Armored Brigade is a very solid game. It was definitely in my top list as well. And then the third game that I had on here, I feel like I'm cheating a little bit. But my third game is Close Combat 2, A Bridge Too Far, which came out in the 1990s, but was re-released this year on Good Old Games. So I feel like I can make that one of my top games of the year, given it was just re-released for modern systems. And this is, I think, the best of the Close Combat series. It looks at Operation Market Garden. It's a real-time tactical game where you're trying to move squads across a map and take key positions and take these bridges. Those of you unfamiliar with Market Garden, it was a failed offensive by the Allies attempting to seize sort of three key points over three different rivers that would allow the Allies to sort of outflank and drive into Germany relatively easily by using airborne troops. And it did not succeed. It didn't go particularly well. And this game basically follows that campaign. And I think the thing that really shines in this game is its campaign system, because you've got three different sections of the map, all with like little mini submaps that you fight over. And each one of these represents the different objectives that the different Allied airborne units had. So you've got a real-time tactical game with a really well-designed campaign overlay for it, so that you've got these three different areas that your three different units are trying to fight and capture and hold, and then you've got to hang on to those maps until essentially the cavalry arrives, until 30 Corps, the British armored formation that's trying to break through the German front line and then link up with these airborne units, cross the bridges that they're seizing intact, and drive into Germany. So you need to take these three maps, you need to hold those positions, and then you need to hold on until the cavalry arrives, so then they can move on to the next spot in the map. And I think it's a really well done game. It's one of the all-time classics of wargaming, and it was re-released on Good Old Games this year. You can find it on GOG.com, and it's also one of my top games of this year.
Why are there threes over the building? And there are twos there too.
Threes over the building and twos. Oh, you're looking at screenshots?
Yeah.
I believe that's the number of stories that particular building is. So like a 3-story building or a 2-story building.
Oh, that's cool.
So like, yeah, you move units through these different towns or objectives, and there's obviously fighting that occurs in buildings. There's fighting that occurs in fields. You can call on artillery. You can, have on-map mortar artillery. Armor's a thing. You can play as either the Allies or the Germans. Depending on where you are on the map and where you are in the campaign. You might have British airborne units, you might have British armored units, you might have American airborne units. It's a really well done game. And I think it also is kind of interesting because it's one of the early games that really tried to model morale for soldiers as well. In sort of a dynamic way where like soldiers could lose their minds and just, they could see their buddy killed and just decide, I'm going to charge this machine gun nest and I'm going to be a hero. Like, what was it, Lieutenant Spears or whatever in Band of Brothers in that Foy episode. But most of the time when they do that, they're going to die. But, sometimes they may succeed, and then you've kind of got this really great story. Or more likely, their morale will snap, and they will run away crying into a corner, and you will never be able to use that guy again. He might still be there on the map, but you won't be able to control him.
It kind of reminds me of like Combat Mission a bit.
Yeah, but it predates Combat Mission. So, there's definitely some things that you can see parallels between the two. And honestly, the user interface and sort of the simplicity of, right click and then you get a pop-up of different options. That's, I think, something in Combat Mission, but it's also something you see in Armored Brigade as well. And I think the way they designed that is really effective.
Yeah, I might have to pick this up on Google Games. I wonder if I played this during the 90s. It's just so far back that my brain doesn't work that far back.
Yeah, it's, I don't know. I think it's a really intriguing game. The first Combat Mission, by the way, came out in 2000. Close Combat was actually a Microsoft game back when they were making games. It's now published by Matrix and Slytherin Games. They own the license now. But yeah, I don't have a lot else to say other than this is one of my favorite games of all time, and it just got re-released. Close Combat came out originally in 1996. Published by Microsoft and developed by Atomic Games.
Oh, wow.
So it came out 4 years before Combat Mission. Well, the original one. The second one came out in 96, so 3 years before.
Wow.
So, my top game, or one of my top games of 2018, is a game that was released in 1997. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
So since
all of this has happened before, and all of this will happen again.
All this has happened before, and will happen again.
That was perfect. That was perfect.
This Battlestar Galactica reference for those of you who don't.
Oh man. So since I started the top games of 2018. I'm going to hand off the first one to the top upcoming games of 2019 to you. So I wonder if
my list.
Knock out something out of my list here.
All right. Well, I actually did two separate lists because there's a lot of games that are coming out next year that I'm really looking forward to. So it's kind of hard for me to say, like, what are my top three? Because I think I have like 15 games that I'm just really excited about.
I'd
say you've only got three. Jeez. I'll put an honorable mention on here because I'm not convinced it'll come out this year, but Grand Tactician, The Civil War, we did a developer interview with those guys, and I was actually on that one, I think. Yeah. That's basically, it's a grand strategic Civil War game, kind of like Ajon Civil War 2, but then it also has a tactical element where like armies meet in combat, then you fight a tactical battle. That's all I'll say about it because it's not really, I'm not going to put it in my list of top three. If it comes out this year, it definitely will be, but I think they're saying late 2019, which, at this point, if they're saying that, to me, that the likelihood it'll slip into 2020 is probably pretty high. That's my impression. I could be wrong. But in terms of my, top three games that are coming out next year, one of them I would say, and again, I don't really put mine in any particular order, but two of mine are going to be nautical based. So I think this is going to be a really exciting year for naval wargaming. But the first I'll mention here is Rule the Waves 2, which is a sequel to, you guessed it, Rule the Waves. And it is a game that is going to put you in charge of one of the great powers in the early 1900s during the arms race that led up to World War I. And is a game that you design ships that you want to basically, essentially what you are is you're Jackie Fisher, you're Alfred von Tirpitz. And your job is to build your navy, to design your navy as one of the great powers. And you're given a budget to do it. And you're able to actually go into a ship designer and design your vessels. So you need to design battleships, cruisers, destroyers. You need to figure out, do I want to build the Musashi or do I want to build the Iowa class? Or like, how do I want to design my ships? And it's all free form. So it's not like there's no predetermined. The game does have like an auto generator for ship designs, but it's not like you're picking the Iowa or the Musashi. It's like, it's up to you to say, like, do I want 18-inch guns, but that means I can't have so much armor, or do I want, a more balanced ship? And, to me, it reminds me a lot of playing a game based off a free program called Ship Spring Sharp or Ship Sharp. I can't remember the name of it. It was this old program that was out where it let you basically kind of build your own ships and balance them and kind of, see how much damage they could take and different things like that, but put into a video game, and then overlaid with sort of strategic considerations of, you're designing this navy, you're building this fleet, you've got this budget, and then you also have to sort of influence international politics. So, there might be a crisis in the world, and your president or prime minister or emperor comes to you and says, what should we do about this? And then you kind of have to respond because, in the early 1900s, the Navy was all about politics, and it was very involved in the politics of colonialism. So I think this is a game, as you can tell just by the way I'm talking about it, I am very excited about. And the key change that Rule the Waves 2 is going to have versus 1 is Rule the Waves 1 was a game that looked at 1900 to 1925. So it was really the golden age of battleships. It had the pre-dreadnought battleships, then it had the dreadnought battleships, and then it had some of the technologies that came immediately after World War I. It never really went into the age of flight. Rule of Waves 2 is going to be a game that looks at 1900 all the way to 1950. So it's going to cover, the glory days of battleships, the transition from the pre-dreadnoughts to the dreadnoughts, but then even from the transition of the dreadnoughts to the carriers. So it'll sort of add an additional layer of technological development, naval revolution in terms of naval warfare. I'm a little uneasy with how well I think the system can model air combat, but we'll see. And it's definitely one of my most anticipated games of 2019.
It was announced in 2016.
It was, but supposedly it's supposed to be coming out in March, so it should be coming out pretty soon. Another game is a similar game in that vein, and that is Ultimate Admiral Dreadnought, which is a game that I believe starts in 1890 or 1895. It starts a little bit earlier, but essentially it's Rule the Waves with better graphics. It's like the way I understand it. I think it's focusing more on like pre-dreadnought, so like 1890s to like 1930s or so. I don't think it goes into the full-fledged World War II carriers, but this is a game that's being developed by the folks who make Ultimate General Civil War and Gettysburg. And they're basically saying like, all right, we've done these land combat games. Let's take a look at naval combat. Let's do Rule the Waves, but let's have graphics with it. Rule the Waves is kind of like a very basic game in terms of graphics. It's almost like an Excel spreadsheet with a few prettier icons and some little dashes that move around a map when battles occur. And what these guys are trying to do with Ultimate Admiral Dreadnought is they're trying to say, let's build 3D ship models. Let's like actually allow you to see what your ship designs look like in more than just sort of a block abstract way. But other than that, it seems to be very similar. So it's going to be, looking at the run up to and then shortly after World War I, the era of dreadnoughts. They'll have modular ship designs where you can design your own ships. I don't know if there's much in the way of politics, but it's that. And then I think they're going to try and take the ultimate like general sort of method with moving your units around with like the point and the click and the drag and whatnot, and bring that into like naval combat. So I'm really excited to see how that all works out. I don't know as much about this game and how that'll work because, it's not a sequel. It's a brand new thing for these guys. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think that's supposed to come out around the same time or somewhat shortly after. But that'll be really interesting to have these two very similar games kind of coming out at about the same time to see how they perform. And see, which one is the game of choice. I think they're probably going to be good at different things. I think the way they're describing Rule or Ultimate Admiral is that there's going to be more minutia in Rule the Waves, more ability to really fine tune your designs probably than will exist in Ultimate Admiral. But I don't know. I guess we'll see. That's sort of my second most anticipated game of 2019.
Yeah, you weren't kidding. This is very bare bones. It's it's not far from Excel spreadsheet. I mean, even
you're talking about Rule the Waves, right?
Yeah, the graphical map that they have where you would probably put like a fancy, Pacific map with some fancy icons or 2D art of the battleships and stuff like that. It looks like one of the colors that you get from MS Paint from your Windows program, and they just colored in just one broad color. It's not even like you can't even see waves, and the ship looks it looks like a rough sketch that you would do on like a napkin. I see where they're trying to go at. They're trying to go with data. So there's a lot of data here. It's, it has like positions, daylight time. I feel like it's more of a factual game than graphically intensive.
Yeah, I mean it's a very deep, and we're talking about Rule the Waves, not Ultimate Admiral. It's a very detailed game, but it isn't a high res game. That's not the point. The point is to design your ships. So enter in the specs that you want for your ships: how many guns, how much armor, what speed, what endurance, what's the complement, how expensive is it going to be to build, what's the build time, how many torpedo tubes, how many secondary batteries, how many tertiary batteries. It's a very detailed ship design game. It's really about building a ship or building a bunch of ships and then fighting battles and seeing how those ships perform, with a political element that is not even remotely historical, just sort of this loose little interesting strategy game on top of it for the politics. Rule the Waves is that's what Rule the Waves is. Ultimate Admiral is going to be more of the like, hey, you want a pretty 3D ship, but combat probably will be a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more abstract, not quite as in-depth. And the same for the ship design, I would assume, as well. But I guess we'll see. Those are two of my most anticipated games, though. And then my third most anticipated game coming out later this year is a game that, I don't know if it's like, I don't know if it's a strategy game or not, but I guess it is a strategy game, but it's also kind of like Papers, Please. And that is We the Revolution, which is a game that puts you in the shoes of a judge during revolutionary France. My understanding is it is somewhat fictional. It's not like it's not following history to the T, but there is a lot of history involved. Obviously, I've seen some screenshots, some video of it, talking about the kings running away from Paris or whatever, and we need to bring them back, and that's very much all that happened. But essentially, it's taking something like Papers, Please, where you were like a border guard in like this dystopian Cold War world, and you had to kind of do your job to make sure people weren't getting out that shouldn't be getting out, but then also sort of managing the politics of your totalitarian state so that you could kind of keep yourself and your family fed and that you didn't get fired and blah, blah, blah. And We the Revolution looks like it's kind of like that, except now you're a judge in revolutionary France. You need to figure out if you're going to execute people, if you're going to be, clement with people, how you're going to respond to the mob that is the revolution, how you're going to respond to political rivals, how you can sort of try and climb the ladder in terms of your prestige and your influence and your power. And I wonder, and I don't know, but I wonder if you could even become like a Robespierre, where you're like in charge of the French Revolution, and what that'll look like. And the game also references, you got to make some decisions with your family as well. Like, are you going to maximize your own power at the expense of maybe turning on your family, or maybe you could even have your family executed or whatever. I don't know, but it's a very interesting game with a really interesting art style, and I'm really excited to see what comes of this. And I think we're trying to get one of the developers on to interview this game in a future episode, and that would be awesome, because I think this is a game that looks like it's doing something that I've never seen before, and I'm really excited about.
Yeah, so definitely we're having them on the show. It's probably going to be the episode after this one. So if you're listening to this, you're going to expect the next one probably in a week or two. So we're actually having them on next week. So that's going to be awesome, or the week after. So we have to, scheduling is still working on that. But I agree with you. The Revolution is definitely a game I'm very interested in. It's definitely, once it was announced, it was definitely hit my radar. And so it's definitely a game I'm looking forward to in 2019. But I will have to kind of segue back to where you were mentioning before about the Grand Tactician's Civil War, 1861 to 1865. This is a game that is my top upcoming game. They did mention 2019 release dates. That's where I'm including it here. If they have to push it to 2020, that's fine. I'll just make that my 2020 top upcoming game. I've been watching a lot of their gameplay videos that they've been releasing. There was one that they unveiled yesterday about the battle in, I forgot, it was in Kentucky. I believe it was Perryville. And he was going through the gameplay video, and he was showcasing the tactical portion of the engine, and it was just so remarkably amazing. So the one thing a couple minutes ago I was talking about how Armored Brigade had that beautiful zoom system. It looks like Grand Tactician basically did the same exact thing here, but with a Civil War map. So if you zoom out all the way out, you'll have like almost like a map, like a Civil War map on a table. And it's almost like you're Lee and you're looking at a Civil War map on a table with, your documents on the side. And
what's this name of this town right here where all the roads converge? I lost my spectacles.
I left my spectacles over there. What is the name of this town?
What is the name of this town? Perryville. So yeah, you could actually move units while you're in that feature where you're all zoomed out. You could actually see units move in real time, and it's smooth. It's not like chunky where it's like jumping in and out, and it has a lousy frame rate. It's very smooth. I was really surprised by that. And then when he was kind of zooming in, it zooms into the actual portion of the map that you're scrolling with your wheel, and you could actually go down to the tree level where you could actually see units shooting out at each other. And it reminded me a lot of Scourge of War. But the one cool thing that this game does, it takes Scourge of War and takes it up a notch. It takes it up a couple of notches. And the reason why I think it does that is, well, it has a strategic element to this game. So everything that you do carries over to the strategic map. So, for example, if you have Stonewall and you put them up in, at the front line and somebody shoots at him and he dies in 1861. Well, guess what? You ain't getting another Stonewall. He's dead. And you're just going to have to go the whole game without having Stonewall there, which will affect the entire course of the Civil War.
Good riddance. The Confederacy was better off without him.
There's so many debates regarding that. I get some people that are so, like viciously defending him. And I got some Longstreet people that are like, well, Longstreet did a lot more than Jackson. So it's both ways. I might cause a lot of fights here on this podcast, and you guys might be ripping at my Twitter feed after this, but I'm a big Longstreet proponent. So I think Longstreet did a bit more than Jackson's. Here comes the flame war.
I mean, you're not going to get a flame war from me. Longstreet also, had sort of a willingness after the war to be like, yeah, we lost. Let's admit that, let's accept the North's freeing of African Americans, and you guys are gonna revolt here in New Orleans, a white supremacist rebellion here in New Orleans. I'm actually gonna try and lead some African American soldiers to put you guys down. There's a lot more I think to admire about Longstreet than is often given credit for.
Other things that I really like about this game is when you're playing
deftly sidestepping my attempt to derail our entire episode.
Forget about it.
Well done, sir.
A little bit. But one other thing that they added into this thing about, I think, a week or two ago, which is they made an announcement that you can set up parapets and wooden trenches in this tactical map. And I was kind of like wondering, is it going to be kind of like buggy? Is it going to be kind of clunky? Is it going to be difficult to kind of set up? And in the gameplay video, he just selected the wooden trenches and just with his mouse, kind of like almost like a SimCity kind of effect, and just like scrolled, and it just was clean. I was like, wow, that was easy. And he selected a couple of units, clicked on that spot. Everything felt so smooth and clean. They did a lot of work in it. You could clearly see the amount of smoothness, the amount of work that they made to have the programming just be so fluid like that. I haven't seen a lot of games that were able to, do that. So it just shows that the level of passion these guys. The other last thing that I wanted to mention, on top of a couple other things, one other thing I do like that the game has brigades, not regiments, because there's I think Scourge of War does regiments, and sometimes it drove me nuts where you have to control this regiment, this regiment, this regiment, and you're almost pulling your hair out sometimes. It did have some brigade parts, but in this game, it's I believe all brigades. And then the other big thing that I really like is commanders behave according to their counterpart. So in the gameplay video, he was showing he was running Hardy, and he kind of got Buell, and he was kind of very aggressive toward Buell. And you can see how the AI was kind of the AI could have easily flanked the Confederates, but it was kind of on the defensive and kind of almost to the point of maybe we should withdraw. And it felt so much like Buell, it was almost like screaming Buell. And yeah, so I really like this game. This, I have to admit, is probably, I'm not going to put it in order, which is my top number one, but this, I got to admit, could be the greatest Civil War game that I've ever played. And I'm so looking forward to it. I can't wait. That's all I could say. I just can't wait.
I lost track. Where was that your first game that you brought up?
Yeah, that was my first game.
What are your other two, buddy? I agree with you on Grand Tactician. I'm looking forward to it.
Come back and say, well, I think you're going too far with the greatest. But...
I mean, let's be fair and say to call a game a greatest game of all time that hasn't come out yet is a little bit premature. But we don't need to turn this into a spam fest of how you love to declare everything in the world the greatest game ever to come out. We can move on to your second game in your list.
The second game in no consecutive order
is also the greatest game of all time.
What is going on? What are you doing? Identity theft is not a joke, Jim. Millions of families suffer every year. Michael!
Well, actually, no. So the second game that I have to put on my list is Imperator Rome. You probably saw this coming. I'm a big Paradox fan. Ever since it was announced, I've been keeping track of the dev diaries. This game is going to turn a lot of heads in the Paradox community and the strategy gaming community. I've seen it all around the internet of top strategy games of 2019. This is on the list every single time. So a couple of cool things that I like about this game. I've been watching some of the gameplay videos that actually just came out. If you guys are not familiar, Paradox has been releasing one video a week. And I've seen the first one. I didn't see the second one yet, but the map is just gorgeous. They have this part where you're, I think, choosing a country. If you're familiar with Paradox games, you choose a country in the beginning. And as you're kind of scrolling around the world trying to figure out which country, it has the curvature of the earth reflected as you're moving through the map, which I thought was beautiful. It's a small thing, but it sticks out, and it was beautiful. Other cool things, unit animations are really nice. I like that in the game. And as they were going through it, I liked little things like, so they had one mercenary general, I think, had a big army of 15,000 men or something like that. And he ran out of money. So whoever the dev was playing ran out of money. They just flatly, the war was going too long, ran out of money. And the mercenary guy was like, all right, peace, and switch allegiances to the enemy nation. And so the guy was like, oh, that's not good at all. So I was low on troops to begin with, but now I'm kind of, I'm screwed. So I thought that was kind of cool. So generals and armies can flip sides, which is awesome. Governors can actually turn against you. An entire province can go into rebellion. Now, if you have one province that goes into rebellion, they could break away. But if you have a group of provinces that are all kind of going to rebellion, they can form a separate nation, which is really cool. Two other things that I'm going to just pick out that I love about this is you could have your army set up attack stances. So you can have an army kind of do almost like an all-out attack or a more defensive posture kind of thing. And the last thing that I want to mention is I'm a big Vicky fan. If you guys are not familiar with Vicky, it's Victoria. It's Victoria 2. It's one of the best economic and industrial Paradox games, possibly best economic industrial game made for strategy gaming. That's debatable. But anyway, this game is basically mixing the beautiful parts about Victoria 2, the economy, the production level, and then taking the best things out of EU4 and Crusader Kings and marrying them together. And that's why this game, I think, is just going to rule all. So I want to get your feedback on that. What do you think?
One game to rule them all.
One ring to rule them all. One ring to find them.
One ring in the darkness bind them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I don't have a lot to say other than what you already did, but I think I haven't been as up on some of the developments with this game as they've kind of been releasing the developer diaries and other things like that. I guess it'll be interesting to see how this works because I feel like the last time they tried this, it didn't go over very well. When was the last version of this game that came out?
The original Rome?
Yeah, was that like 10 years ago?
It was a while.
I mean, it did not do well for them, so it'll be interesting to see how this works. But I love the idea of them going back to Rome. I love the way that Paradox sort of merges the character development versus just the standard 4X game that's more impersonal. So there's a lot that's interesting and exciting to see, and I will definitely play this game a lot when it comes out. But I don't really have a lot of other thoughts other than what you already shared. It's, if we expanded this list out to 10, it would be in my list. But not quite in my top 3.
My last one is another one by Slytherin. It is Panzer Corps 2. I've been waiting for this game for quite a bit. When they announced that Panzer Corps is getting a sequel, I was all up on that. It's a game that I really love playing on my iPad. Yes, Panzer Corps 1 is on the iPad, and it's also on Steam, so I love being able to play it on both platforms.
Yeah, I don't think Panzer Corps 2 is going to be on iPad.
They didn't mention it on the iPad yet. It's only coming out on Steam, but I'm hoping down the line.
I doubt it.
Crossing my fingers,
I doubt it. Ian McNeil, the basically the head of Slytherin, made a comment when Apple removed Afghanistan 11 from the App Store, and it was basically like, this is why we don't release games on iOS anymore.
Yeah.
So if he's saying that, if the head of Slytherin is saying that, this is, I don't think you've got a great odds to see them put the sequel to Panzer Corps on there.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to put a lot of hopes and prayers on that, and maybe write Santa Claus for 2019. Maybe he'll.
This was his quote for Afghanistan 11. Apple just pulled Afghanistan 11 from the App Store because it got people from a specific government or other real entity as the enemy. You mean like every realistic game ever? And people wonder why we don't do iOS anymore.
Yeah. I'm hoping that relationship can get repaired. I know it's a long shot. I would really love to see it on a mobile platform. I know they're not making it for Android. I know this is going to really hurt the iOS for Slytherin and iOS and Apple relationship. It's just, I really love playing Panzer Corps and Slytherin games on my iPad and my iPhone. It's a great, especially if you're on the go all the time, which I am. There's one weekend where I have military duties, another weekend where I have to spend time with the family, and it's just I'm always on the go, and I don't carry a laptop because it's just too clunky. So iPhone and iPad is always perfect. So I'm hoping, but a couple of things about Panzer Corps 2. I really love the graphics. The graphics, you guys got to take a look at it. It's breathtaking. The map is incredible. The shadows, plumes of smoke. It's like, something like this looks like it's almost like from a feature film. It's just gorgeous. Other cool things that I really like that the developers are taking particular attention with specific unit models like tanks and armored vehicles. Like the amount of detail that they're putting into it is like insane. And it just looks incredible on that rich map. A couple of cool things that I really like about it is they're scaling all the units and all the maps to 4K resolution. So if you have a 4K display, like my iMac in front of me, I could actually hook Panzer Corps 2 on my iMac at full 4K. Or if you guys have multiple monitors or like super wide monitors, it's actually going to scale for that too, which is like, when I hear stuff like this, I'm like, damn, I really love these developers because they're just saying, hey man, we're gonna cover every single way you want to play. So other cool things that I like that they're doing is they're fixing a lot of little issues that they had with Panzer Corps 1 with like victory issues. They're also focusing a bit on the AI in terms of it relying less on scripting and it's supposed to be more intelligent. And the last thing, which I really do like, is they're disabling the turn limits. So like there's some scenarios in Panzer Corps 1 where you have like, all right, you have 15 turns, get at the Germans. If you don't like capture this objective, you lose. It's just, if you do, you lose. But you could actually go into this scenario and actually turn that off. So if you want to take 20 turns to do it, you can. So I like that. It's really cool. I'm very psyched for this game. It looks absolutely beautiful. And I just love how the developers are kind of like, wherever you want to play, how you want to play, we got you.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Panzer Corps is a game that I'm sure I will play, and I will probably play a fair amount. I played a lot of Panzer Corps 1. I played Panzer General back in the day, which is clearly the sort of the original game in this sort of the original type of turn-based war game like this that Panzer Corps was sort of a remake of. I don't know if I'll play it. The only thing I would say is I feel like there have been a lot of similar games that have come out in recent years, even multiple games from Matrix and Slytherin. So I think it's probably, good that they're making some of the changes that they're making to try and make this game feel a little bit different. Because when you said, why wouldn't you be excited for Panzer Corps 2? I think my thought was, well, I already got a sequel. It was called Order of Battle. Like they're like they're just. I think I'm about done with this type of a game, and maybe I'll change my tune when it comes out. But I played a lot of these types of games over the last 5 years or so, and I can't say I'm jonesing for something new, just because there's been so much that's been so similar. But to your point, they are making a lot of changes, so maybe it'll feel different and unique.
Yeah, I think just the work that they did with the and I know it's. A lot of people would say it's just, the graphics and animations are kind of like a bonus. That's not what should define what a game is. But it's when you're looking at the map, and I don't think they showed any gameplay off yet. But when I see those screenshots of it, it looks absolutely gorgeous. I do realize that they have Order of Battle, and they actually have some Order of Battle for the iPad too. Played Order of Battle and I played Panzer Corps, and I just feel like when I'm playing Panzer Corps, there's just, I guess, more stats when I was playing it last time that I felt like it's just, there's a lot of data there. Every time
to each their own. I know I've gotten a lot of comments on some of my videos saying like, why aren't you talking about Panzer Corps 2? I'm really excited about it. It's like, some people are really excited about it, and that's fine. And we'll see what happens when it comes out. I guess my only comment to the graphics thing is the worst of all the Panzer General games, the original SSI Panzer General games, the worst Panzer General game, and it's not even close, was Panzer General 3D. It was just an abomination of a game. And, hopefully this is not that. I doubt it will be. I'm sure Matrix and Slytherin, they'll do a better job than that, but it's just... graphics to me are not really all that, I'm a huge rule the waves guy, and that's basically playing like an Excel spreadsheet, or I'm a huge out of the park baseball fan. That's another like spreadsheet game. So I'm not exactly a graphics savant, if you will.
Yeah, but if you're playing a game for a couple hours, you need something that's pleasing for the eyes. It's like, it's stuff that you put up in your office, like a pinup girl, and you're like, you need something to like look at to kind of rest your eyes, a little bit of eye candy. It goes a long way.
Be careful about putting a pinup girl in your office these days. But rightly so. But yeah, I guess, I spend 8 hours a day working primarily in Word and Excel. So, whatever. Graphics.
For you, it's just like,
it's all right. Great. Looks like a PowerPoint presentation. That's good enough for me.
Other honorable mentions that I want to point out is we mentioned Tropico 6. Two other games that I'm looking forward to. It's not the top three. Would be Her Majesty's Ship, which is by Every Single Soldier, the actual studio that made Afghanistan 11. I do like some of the animations, some of the concepts that he's putting into this game. It looks really cool.
You know why that game got delayed so much? It was supposed to come out like 6 months ago.
Yeah, but I'm always a proponent of the developer. So, some people flip out when a game is delayed or doesn't arrive on time, and they're like scream bloody murder, like talk about Red Dead Redemption 2. People literally were like rioting in the streets almost. I'm exaggerating, but I'm fine with a developer postponing. There's an old saying in the developer community, it's ready when it's ready. And I'm fine with them postponing and keep postponing it until Johan Nagel runs that studio. until he feels like this is my concept, this is my vision for the game, and then put it out. Don't put it out because you're like, for extra money. Don't like, hey, I got to get it out for profit or whatever. Put it out because this is your vision. This is the baby you're putting out in the world. Make sure it's ready. And so we could play it and be like, hey, dude, you made an incredible game. Great job, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, by all means, I don't want him to release a pile of junk. I just didn't know if there was anything that had been announced about why it was being delayed.
Probably, I know it's in beta right now, so it's probably bug testing. They're probably just trying to kill all that out. The one cool thing that I don't think I've mentioned this, but like when I was playing Afghanistan 11, I can't think of, and it's done by a single studio, like by Johan, and I can't remember any bug issues with that game. I can't remember any crashes or anything like that. So he's probably just bug collecting the crap out of that game. So because every time I play like Afghanistan 11 on my iPad or on Steam, I don't ever remember any crashes or any like bugs like ever. I don't think I can ever recall a spot where it just didn't work or crashed or anything like that. So maybe that's what he's trying to do.
Cool. All right. What about your other honorable mentions?
The last one is going to come out of left field is Civilization 6 Gathering Storm. It's a DLC. It's coming up in 2019.
You'd have like some thunderstorm sound effect right now.
Oh, I'm going to special effect on this whole episode.
Oh boy.
But yeah, this is a game that is definitely on my honorable mentions list. They announced it a few months ago. I like playing Civilization 6. The cool thing about this one is they're adding components to Civilization that's going to change the way this game plays. And they always say that with expansion packs, but this time it's going to actually change the core mechanics of the game and change the way you have to develop your civilization. This time, they're changing a lot of core mechanics. They're adding climate change to Gathering Storm, which it might piss some people off because, that's a hot button topic nowadays. But they're also adding volcanoes. So if you're in an ancient era and, there's a nice mountain there and all of a sudden it explodes, yeah, that might affect you pretty badly. Tsunamis, you're going to have, changing climates throughout the time. So you might have like an ice age, while you're in a medieval period, which is going to affect your food consumption. All these critical things they're adding into the game, which is going to have to change the way you set up settlements, where you put troops. You obviously don't want to station troops next to a big mountain because you never know when that sucker is going to go off, So I feel like this is going to change the mechanics and the way I play Civilization. So I definitely had to put this on the list.
Cool.
Are you a Civilization fan?
Honestly, it's weird. Is like someone who plays primarily strategy and war games, I never really played Civilization.
Oh, wow.
I played a lot more Colonization, like a free version of Colonization, which was another Sid Meier game, than I ever played Civilization. I think I binged played like Civ 2 once one night, and that was about it. I have Civ 5 or 4, or I think maybe it's 5, but I've barely played it. It's not because it's bad. It's just, I don't know. I think it's a little bit like too abstracted sometimes. Super high level, like to be like designing your city in the way that you interact with your cities. And then to just have like, you've got one guy in your army or like 2 soldiers or like 5 soldiers, whatever. Like it just doesn't feel like it's fine as far as game design. Like I'm not going to say it's a bad game, but it doesn't resonate with me.
I'll be honest. The thing that bothers me about this game that I have to shut it down sometimes is the amount of colors. I don't know if it's the saturation of the colors or what, but eventually after maybe 2 hours of playing the game, I have to shut it off because like my eyes start to actually hurt and I literally can't play it anymore. I start getting a headache and I literally just have to quit the game. And it's just really weird. I don't have that with any other game.
I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure. Anyway, so that does it for your list of games. It does it for my list of games. I think the episode's been carrying on for quite some time, so we probably should wrap it up here in a moment or two. As far as what to look forward in a future episode, well, we're going to have an interview with the developer of We the Revolution, one of the games that we're really looking forward to later this year. And it's just good to connect. It's been a little while since we've been on an episode. I'd like to do an episode that's talking about a game called Victory at Sea. We might have Tortuga Power from the YouTube channel Tortuga Power on the podcast for that one. He's really been playing a lot of it, and I think we have some interesting but divergent opinions about that game. So, we'll look forward to that, and then also the interview with We the Revolution, and catch up with you guys here in a couple of weeks. I guess the only other thing I'd say is, it's been a while since our last episode, at least since the last one we've been on together. This is the Single Malt Strategy Podcast. Anything worth reporting in terms of recent beverages or interests or anything along those lines?
Well, now that you mention it, so I got a chance to go to this fancy work outing that my girlfriend, at her place, and we went to this really 5-star kind of bar/restaurant and free drinks. So I decided to pick up a Macallan 18-year-old Scotch, and oh my fucking shit! Wow, I gotta admit. I had this glass of Scotch, and it could change my life.
Okay. Wow.
It was incredible. It was so good. I mean, if I had to choose credible, I was trying to figure out a beautiful actress that I could pick out, but none popped in my head. But a beautiful actress that actually my girlfriend.
You and beautiful actress and pinup girls today, huh? We're
Yeah,
going back to 1940, 1950.
My girlfriend's going to be like, what was that? And so I'm just going to stop right there. But if I had to choose in that aspect, it's going to be a really hard choice. I might have to choose the whiskey, guys, to be honest.
All right. Well, actually going to be a podcast that we're going to be mentioning single malts for a change. It's been a while. Well, you had an 18-year-old Macallan. I have recently, a couple of months ago, I picked up a bottle of 12-year-old Macallan. So not quite as expensive, not quite as fancy as your all work expense paid booze tour. But I have actually just finished, yesterday? A bottle of triple cask matured fine oak 12-year-old Macallan. It is an exquisite marinade of whiskey matured in European and American sherry, seasoned oak casks, and ex-American bourbon oak casks. So, I got it for a really good price. It was like I want to say for usually 12-year-old Macallans when I run into them, and granted I'm in Chicago, so expensive alcohol typically way overpriced compared to what Wisconsin where I grew up would charge. But I think it's somewhat taxes, but I don't know. It just generally seems to be more expensive. But I think I picked this one up for like $50, which is probably about $20 or $30 less than it usually is. So it was a good deal. It was a good price, and it was a really nice drink. Whiskey is one of those things that I would like to be able to talk about in a more sophisticated way, but I am by no means like I'm not going to be like, it's some edges of burnt toffee or other things like I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, other than like it's reasonably smooth, has a nice, interesting kind of taste to it. It's not peaty or anything like that. It doesn't taste like you're drinking a campfire or anything like that. I think you can really taste sort of the sherry elements of it, kind of mellowing it out, adding a little bit of sweetness to it. But I really enjoyed it, and I'm sad it's gone. I've kind of been nursing the bottle over the last 3 or 4 months, and finished it up last night, and really enjoyed it.
So I kind of like bit the forbidden fruit here, because I had this glass, and the first thing I did is I went on Google to try to find a bottle of this, and so apparently the bottle's like $200 to $300.
300 feels high for an 18-year-old, but 200 I could definitely see.
Yeah, so I love this, but $200 is like, that's almost the cost of an iPad at this point. So yeah,
but let's be honest, which is worth more? I think I'm going to go with the Scotch.
So how many? I want like for $50, $60, right, for a bottle. How many years can I get? Something close to this quality.
I haven't had the 18-year-old Macallan, so it's I can't speak to close to that quality. $50 or $60. I guess it depends where you're at, because one of my favorites, and I've mentioned it on the podcast before. I haven't actually had it in quite some time. Probably been like a year and a half since I've even had any of it, but maybe 2 years even. I'm not sure. It's been a while. But one of my favorite scotch it's not a single malt. It's a blended malt, which means it's a blend of single malts. There's no grain whiskeys involved. And it is Johnny Walker Green Label. In Wisconsin, it's $50. In Chicago, it's like $70.
Oh, wow.
I saw. And it is a 15-year-old blended malt. I don't think it'll be the same quality as an 18-year-old Macallan. Macallan is kind of the cream of the crop, if you will, for single malts, at least in some people's opinion. But I really enjoy it. It's relatively smooth, and it's a pretty good drink. Alternatively, you could go for like a 12-year-old Macallan is usually something you can find in the $50 to $75 range, depending on what you're looking at. So, maybe just try the 12-year-old variant and see if it's substantially worse than your 18-year-old or not.
So buy the 12-year-old, buy a couple of 12-year-olds, put them in storage, wait 6 years, and then try it again.
Well, it doesn't quite work that way, unless you're gonna buy them when they're still in the cask. The years that it is old is how long it was aged in a whiskey cask, not how long it was in the bottle.
I was kind of hoping. You never know.
No, I think theoretically, if it most nicer whiskeys have a real cork in them. Theoretically, I think the cork can kind of cause a little bit of maturing in the bottle, but not much. It's really about how long it's in the cask.
Okay.
But just to clarify, you meant buying 12-year-old scotches, I'm assuming, and putting them in storing them for several years.
Hey guys, I just want to give you a heads up. I'm starting a GoFundMe for
for what, your legal bills, or for your scotch?
For my scotch.
I think we've lost the thread of this discussion, so we probably should wrap this thing up. So anyway, so you had a 18-year-old Macallan. I've had a 12-year-old Macallan. It is the Macallan podcast, officially sponsored by Macallan. No, not really. Anything else? Any last words before we send everybody off into the sunset?
No. The last thing I would have to say is Star Trek Season 2 started, so be sure to watch that.
Your Star Trek. I saw they're not doing like the post episode like analysis or commentary or whatever.
You've been watching it. You've been keeping up on the news.
No, I've been keeping up on your Twitter.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're not. So, but there's a couple of new Star Trek series. So there's literally a Picard series in the works, a Michelle Yeoh series. It's going to be Star Trek all the time. So I'm a happy camper. I'm motivated.
You need to start your own Star Trek podcast.
Yeah. I
mean, you can invite me on it, but I'll probably just be like, oh yeah, lightsabers. They're really cool.
And then you're gonna have a whole bunch of the Trekkies head over to your home with pitchforks and lanterns and wildfires and stuff like that.
It's okay. I'll just like Captain Kirk. I'll hold them off with my lightsaber.
Oh man! But no,
right,
that's good.
Cool. Well, it's been good to have another episode with you. It's been a little while since we've been together, but I hope everybody enjoyed this look back at 2018 and sort of a look forward into what the rest of 2019. We're almost a month into the year, but what the future holds for us in 2019. And again, thanks guys for tuning in. Until next time, this is episode 32 of the Single Malt Strategy Podcast. I'm here with Jean, the strategy war gamer, and Matt, the historical gamer. That's me. Until next time, guys, thanks for listening, and we're out.
See you guys.
Bye.